You're listening to a DM podcast.
Welcome to Over the Back Fence. I'm Di Edwards.
I'm Nicola Dale, and we're buddies of nearly 4 decades. And yes, we actually do happen to share a back fence.
We do. We love parties, people, inspirational stories, and honestly, making the most out of life.
So join us as we open our hearts, share our stories, and hear from some of the most inspirational people in the world, and have a laugh along the way.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Well, that was an interview and a half with Tim Olsen.
Oh, Tim Olsen.
Yep.
Gosh, I love him. How's his
Yeah.
book? Was it Son of the Brush?
And of course, son of the brush bean. His father was John Olsen, who only just recently passed away.
What do they call it? Australia's Picasso, they call him.
Amazing, amazing artist. But, you know, what I love about Tim, he's raw and he shares living in the shadow of his father.
Yeah.
Like what that was, you know, how difficult that was for him.
Absolutely.
And
how he
going-
overcame it.
Yes.
And his struggles, you know, along the way too. When I tell it, listeners, you're going to love someone when he talks about the Betty Ford Clinic. I mean, whoa.
Amazing.
You know, it really is. So that's...
And his true love of art, and he's got one of the most fabulous art galleries in Sydney. But yeah, I don't think anyone has had as much experience as what he has in the art world. And I'm not talking about from the brush, I'm talking about overview of art. He's fascinating. I learned so much from that interview.
so much too.
Yeah,
And
beautiful soul.
Full of quotes. There's some great quotes in it, wasn't it?
I wrote
it
one
really
down
was
too. I loved it.
You know, what art schools are colleges of life. You know, I love that.
Yeah. I hope something resonates for you. You'll enjoy the interview.
We certainly did.
Fantastic.
Enjoy.
Okie dokie.
Okie dokie, Jodie.
It's a great pleasure. We're going to welcome Tim Olsen, one of Australia's most recognised and respected art identities and successful gallery owners, who just so happens to tell a good friggin' story. In fact, I quickly just grabbed a glimpse at Google last night, and there was a Financial Review interview, I don't know, it was something like 2016. She said, now you imagine Financial Review, it's quite straight, but she said, during the interview with Tim, at this point, I'm so absorbed by Olsen's story that the food has come and gone without me realising.
Oh,
So, on that note, for our listeners, let's welcome Tim to Over the Back Fence.
Well, that's
Welcome.
a compliment. Thank you.
Hey, welcome, Tim. We are
Yeah.
thrilled that you're here. Thank you.
Thank you both for having me.
it's
I'm
great.
very humbled. Thank you.
So, Tim, tell us, you know, obviously, you know, you're born with famous parents, and I suppose there's the good and bad with that, you know, along the way. But how did the art world sort of start for you? Was it all you ever knew?
Well, I kind of didn't really want to get involved in the art world when I first left school. You know, I went to a school like King's, you know, and I was good at rugby and rowing and that sort of thing. And I was a boarder, and really I was really happy being at King's. But my father cast such a huge shadow, and he didn't mean to hurt me, but everything was always about him. And so I naturally had very low self-esteem, thinking that I would never be as good as him, you know. In
I
my
might
life.
add that we're talking about John Olsen.
Yes,
All
yeah.
of you would know.
Yeah. And sorry, he sadly passed away.
He said Dad
You
passed
told
away
me
5 months ago.
condolences
So
too with that.
so I've been overseas and I've just come back with my Mediterranean tan.
It's looking good.
Which will be gone
Looking
next
hot,
week.
Tim.
But anyway, I realised very quickly after I left school, I worked for John Caldor, who was a very famous designer. You know, I realised that really I wasn't cut out to be. I'm basically unemployable because I don't fit into a 9 to 5 routine. I'm not very good having. You know, I think it was that King's thing of having authority. I wanted to get away from a situation where someone had an authority over me again. So I went back to art school and didn't know where I was going to end up. I was actually quite good at drawing, quite good at painting, quite good at printmaking. But really and truly, you know, my whole experience was defined by who my father was. All the teachers hated me because they were jealous of him. A lot of them were practicing artists who didn't have my father's success. And you get a lot of inverted snobbery and kind of resentment. And so really I've had to work twice as hard in lots of ways, being the son of Australia's Picasso, as some people call it, which I think is a bit overrated. But I had to really find a way in the art world without probably being an artist. And I was able to do that. I discovered that I was a good communicator. I was good at making art sound easy. And I really hate the pretentious aspects of the art world. And so my language is really simple and really direct about how I talk about art. And I found a niche. And I found a niche in that. So 30 years later, I'm still in business.
How wonderful.
Which is
Yeah.
remarkable.
Yes,
So
yeah.
you did find your niche. I
Yeah.
mean, you mentioned then about growing up under my father's shadow. That would have taken a lot to come out and find the light.
Well, it did. It did. You know, he's extremely charismatic. He extremely well read. He's an avid lover of poetry. You know, he was as he called himself, he was, you know, the darling of Sydney, you know, as a young artist and highly celebrated. But I realised that just to be yourself is the greatest reward in life. You don't have to be as colourful. You don't have to be everyone's cup of tea. And I think once you realise you don't have to be everyone's cup of tea, you're a much more appealing beverage.
Yeah, very true.
I love that. Tim, has that
Yeah.
come with,
Yeah.
You've
has that
come a
come
long
with
way, Tim.
age? In your 60s now? Is it sort of a statement that you sort of think now through those decades you can say that?
Yeah, I think so. My father died 5 months ago, and it was extraordinary. You know, he was painting up until the age of 95, and he was in the studio every day. And only a few weeks before he died, he said to me, "It's been a double-edged sword for you."
He said to you.
Yeah, he said, because I know Australia's tall poppy syndrome, you know, it creates a lot of resentment and envy, and people would think you were good at what you did, or people want to be close to you because of who I am and you being my son and everything. But you've represented me. You've been the most honest art dealer I've ever had. You know, you've always been very honest with money and everything, and diligent and paying quickly. And look, you've got 40 other artists apart from me. And
Wow.
I want to say to you that don't listen to anyone, because you are a self-made man.
So you did a
wow.
full circle with your
Yes.
father. You went talk about shining. Like
Yeah.
before, I mean, obviously years before Dad passed away, you had an opportunity to rekindle that relationship and that love
Yeah.
that you have for each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
Because in life, a lot of people live and die without completing the full circle of a relationship that
Yeah.
they revered and treasured.
Yeah.
In your case, after reading the book, and I hope the listeners, Son of the Brush, read this magnificent book. But
It's a brilliant
for
book.
you to experience that full circle, how did that feel to actually come out the other side, shining the light with him?
Well, it was extraordinary. The day he died, he'd been working on 4 paintings for the
The
last...
day he died.
He had been...
Oh, now that's a great
What
life,
age
isn't
are we
it?
talking again?
He was 95.
95 to paint the day he died.
Hallelujah.
And he was-
That's living a fantastic full life.
He'd been working on 4 major paintings for the last 6 months. He went into the studio that morning, finished them, and did
wow.
something unusual, which he normally never did,
Yes.
because he normally does it until they go on the truck. But he signed them. And my sister and I were in the kitchen making lunch, overlooking our beautiful lake in the Southern Highlands.
Gorgeous.
A beautiful property we have. And he said, "I'm just going to have a lie down."
No.
And virtually he passed away.
The most beautiful way to pass
What a
away. The
life.
beautiful
And to
way.
end his
Yeah.
life
I know,
in
he
that
could have had
way.
lunch first.
Yeah, like, excuse me, it was in the oven.
I think because he's been married 4 times or something. You know?
words
And
were
didn't he
spoken,
outlive all
weren't they?
he outlived all his wives too?
He
didn't
outlived all his wives.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Foreign women are meant to outlive.
Which has made our inheritance look a little bit more interesting.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But
But
just-
don't worry, wherever there's a will, there's family.
Yeah, that's true. But when you're talking about going to Kings and you're like that, but I was just thinking, you've had such an incredible life, because didn't you sort of witness to this bohemian lifestyle when you were a young kid and sort of seeing free love and then to get sent to a boarding school, it must have been
What a
from one
contrast.
extreme to the other.
Yeah, no, I could never work it out because, you know, as a small kid, I went to a one-teacher school in country Victoria, and I went to school in Spain when we lived in I lived in Europe, you know, as a small child. I spoke fluent Spanish before the age of 7. And then for my left-wing parents, who were friends with Gough Whitlam and Bob Hawke, to suddenly send me to the most right-wing school you could possibly imagine
It's incredible.
was quite really the antithesis of my upbringing. But I can understand why now.
Yes.
You know,
yes,
because it's given me structure, and I think it's structure that's given me the path to success.
Oh, how interesting is
That's
that too,
really-
isn't
that
it?
is really interesting.
Structure and boundaries
Because,
and discipline, which we all
Yeah,
need growing
and
up.
particularly
Yes.
kids too, because like in the book you talk about dinners in the house in Watson's Bay. I mean, we're talking about dinner with Arthur Boyd, Sydney Nolan, like
Brett Whiteley, they're all there.
Whiteley, yeah.
like these guys are just sitting there chewing the fat with
Patrick
John
White,
Olsen.
you know, like,
Yeah.
but as a small kid, you know, I used to tie Barry Humphries and Patrick White's shoelaces together. 'Cause I
See
didn't-
them trip over.
'cause I
See,
didn't-
isn't that
I didn't know
brilliant?
what the F they were talking about. I had something to do, had to do something, you know.
Wow.
That's
But there was
just-
obviously a lot of stories told
Mm,
that you bear witness to as a very young child.
Yes. Yeah,
in that kitchen or dining room.
Yeah, no. You know, we lived in an artist colony for a little while, which was. It sounds really sort of rustic and hippie, but they're actually beautiful mud brick houses with bits of old stained glass windows from churches, and it was a bit like being in The Hobbit, you know,
Wow.
because everyone
Yeah,
had
that's great.
everyone had these amazing little houses and studios, and there were Clifton Pugh, the artist that sort of ran this, had a huge fenced off area where there were emus and kangaroos everywhere, and there was a big dam where everyone swam naked, and except for my mother, who was quite, she was a PLC girl and stayed that way.
My daughter went to PLC.
Wow. Isn't that beautiful?
The good and bad of it all.
Against all odds,
Yeah,
she was
but-
fully dressed. and
Yeah,
was
but I
naked.
didn't really have any train tracks to really stay within, you know, with the kind of upbringing I had.
Yes.
And so I think my parents investing in my education. I'm not saying that I may have got a better education at a public school. Who knows?
No, but if you weren't getting those sort of like boundaries at home, I think there comes a time in life, if you're going to function in life and in business, we probably all need it.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm still friends with a lot of people I went to school with who are now captains of industry, and so that's always good for business.
Yes.
Always,
Yeah.
yeah.
So tell us about
Yeah.
your business now.
Well, it's 30 years old. Not a lot of galleries last that long.
No,
It's
they
amazing.
don't.
And
I love Olsen
and
galleries.
you know, it's not considered the coolest gallery these days, but I don't want to be the coolest
It's the
gallery.
real McCoy, though.
It's about quality and about what's real, and I like to express skill in what artists can do. I don't want to get into sort of high-end conceptual art where everyone goes, you know, what's going on here, you know, what does it mean? I like people to come into my gallery and look at this and go, wow, I'm not an art expert, but I love this. You know, I can
it's
see why
so
this art,
good,
I can
isn't
see
it?
the talent.
Yes.
You know, I like art where you can see the talent. And I think that's been the basis of why I think about business has gone so well.
Yeah.
Is because people can see why things are good, even if they're not art experts. So, as I said before, I do like to keep everything as accessible and unpretentious as possible. I always say to people that feeling is just as important as seeing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how's a painting make you feel? What are you feeling? What are you seeing? If you propose those questions to people, they reach into themselves.
Yes.
And then they start to feel an affinity with whatever they're looking at or not. Then we move on to the next painting. But, you
Yeah, I
know,
love it.
But it's
Yeah.
really to do with the fact that everybody has the capacity to interrogate or to try. There's a natural instinct with all of us. You know, we all want to like other people. You know, even we all meet people and want to try and find a way that we can connect.
Yes.
And
yeah.
it's the same thing with art. You know, you need to set a parameter by which you try and make them want to connect with what they're looking at. What's important to me is because I grew up in the bush a lot of the time. You know, I grew up in Watson's Bay essentially, but we had a beautiful big house in the Ku-ring-gai National Park, and we lived in the countryside in Victoria, and we lived, you know, in tiny villages in Europe, and always close to nature. You know, the sea and whatever. And I believe nature should be able to be felt through great art. You know, the idea that even as something may look industrial, that in what I exhibit, I like to sense that there's still nature trying to peek its head through, or in some
Isn't
way.
that beautiful?
I love
Yeah.
that.
It's just so beautiful because
Yeah.
we
Yes.
always talk about, you know, those,
we're
those
obsessed by
tools
nature.
of making you feel better if you're feeling down. And,
Yeah.
you know, one of the big tips is always like even just like
Take a
walk
walk
through
in nature.
So
That's right.
it's, and I think
Listen-
that's
listen
so
to
when
the
you for a
birds.
piece of art, you've got a whole lot of things combined there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
like also too that you don't have, as you're saying, the snobbery, because you can get someone who comes to an art gallery and
Yes.
they don't know
No.
who's a famous artist and one from the other.
No.
And they don't have to feel it's not, you know, sort of like inadequate because they haven't studied the fine artists of the century.
No.
And it's just, and what's, you know, you're sort of saying of what's sort of in someone's eyes is
Yes.
great and someone else isn't.
It's
and
so
I love
different.
that you have that and it's so
Yeah,
welcoming
that's
for
what art's
everybody.
about.
Well,
Right.
my staff are very well trained into, like, I've had people say to me, I went to 5 different galleries. Your gallery is the only one I went into where I got a smile and someone got up and gave me
Wow.
a catalogue.
Oh,
wow.
welcoming.
Yes,
And then we
That's
made
half the battle, isn't
and
it?
then we made a sale.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there
yeah,
you go.
no, but that's
Yeah.
life, is
Because
it
some
not?
people have a fear about
Welcoming.
going into art,
Without
art
physically.
galleries or art, because of that sort of fear of not knowing their
True.
art and feelings
Yeah,
like, oh,
I'm not knowledgeable.
N-
Well,
yes.
don't come in knowledgeable. Come in with your heart
Yes.
and your head.
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel?
Well, I worked for an amazing guy when I was at art school called Anders Ausbach, who was a restaurateur. He owned
Yeah.
about 5 or 6 restaurants.
Yes.
Amazing man. He was not only a brilliant chef, but he was just one of those. He sort of had Asperger's. He was a perfectionist. He even was an opera tenor. You know,
Wow.
when I was working at the Wharf Theatre, in between, the pre-dinner and after theatre, he would get out there and there'd be a pianist and he would sing perfect, Wagner. He's extraordinary.
Wow.
But one thing Anders said to me, which I never ever forgot, is that whatever you do in life, Tim, it's all about getting the feeling right.
Wow, it's beautiful. So you've had
See,
good
it's internalised
mentors,
feeling.
Tim. Was that correct through your life? You've had really great mentors, not just, say, through your
Yes.
family, your dad.
Yes.
And
Well,
your
probably
mum.
searching for father figures too, I gather, when you're living under a shadow.
Well, yeah, I sort of was, not sort of consciously, but because my father married and moved out of, New South Wales, went and lived in South Australia, or he was married to a woman who basically extricated us from his life. It's been pretty tough. He made a couple of bad choices with women who wanted to try and make sure they got everything, when he was gone. And it all backfired. The karma was like, it all backfired, obviously.
Karma is a bitch.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Can't see it
and then
coming,
you
but
marry
it'll
one.
come,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, he really taught me is that your children are really your greatest asset in regard to reflecting who you were as much as your art. And my sister and I have become very successful. A lot of people who with successful parents don't often find their way through life because they want to live as the victim or the person who was so overshadowed they couldn't get on with what they were born to do. They never learned how to become that cliche, the best version of themselves. They got involved in drugs and alcohol, and I nearly went down that slippery slope to oblivion. And I dug myself out.
Dark hole.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you share a little
Well
bit
done.
about that? Because we've had, we've talked about sort of with people with sort of addictions and and now, that there is hope that you can get out. But you had a problem with alcohol, is that correct, Tim?
Yeah, I think a lot of these things get down to trauma, and people are very critical and judgmental about people who can often find themselves in an addiction, whether it's cocaine or alcohol or whatever. But a lot of it's trauma-based, and it's your way of medicating. I mean, I was sexually abused as a child. That may have been something to do with it. But also always feeling small. And I spent my life always trying to please my father. And then when he would marry someone and then basically sideline my sister and I found that extremely painful. And I think that's a lot of the reason why I drank a lot and then sort of crossed that thin red line into alcoholism, is because it was my only way by which I could feel some kind of escape from that trauma.
Yeah.
And
Just that numbing.
Yeah, absolutely.
that numbing.
There's
And-
many ways to do it, and alcohol will be one of them.
And what
Yeah.
was your turning point for that then, Tim?
I could see that it was starting to affect other people, but waking up under a Christmas tree, having not found my way to bed, and there was a couple of bottles of wine lying on the floor with me as I'd be playing spin the bottle with myself.
Oh.
It's not that
What
funny.
age you do?
But my son waking me up saying, Dad, my little 4-year-old son saying, Daddy, all I wanted you to do was help me open my Christmas presents.
That'll do it. That'll be a turning point.
And I thought, this is just,
Wow.
That's rock bottom.
This
Huh?
Yeah.
is as low as you
Yep.
can get.
Yep,
Yeah.
literally.
So I ended up getting a flight to Los Angeles, and I booked myself.
Was that the next day?
The next day after waking
how's
up,
that?
I was able to have a lovely Christmas day, and I didn't drink again. But got straight onto a Qantas, and then booked a flight to LA and booked myself
Wow.
into Betty Ford. And arrived there with, there was professors, doctors, movie stars, porn stars,
You name
actors,
it.
you name
I just want
it.
to know what
Prostitutes,
it's like.
they're all,
Life's
they're
like
all,
a box of
we're all
chocolates.
thrown
Betty
together,
Ford.
and
Yes.
they don't care who you are. They throw you in. You're,
Yeah.
Bit of tough love.
And is it like an
Mates.
AA sort of meeting, like where you open up and you talk about things?
Oh, it's a
or how
long,
is
it's
it
a long
sort of-
process. The first thing they do is basically make sure you don't, have a seizure and drop dead.
Of course.
Right.
So
Yes.
they they ply you with Valium, and you get put into different little houses where you live with other people of the same sex or whatever. But I remember the counsellor saying to me when I first got in, Tim, you're here for a very good reason, And I said, yes, I know. And he said, well, what would happen if you went back to Australia and you started drinking again? I said, well, I'd die. He said, that's the best thing that could happen because according to your family, you're an absolute pain in the ass.
Slap.
And that was like, my God, that was the best thing I could have heard.
Absolutely. That's the day of the awakening.
It's the day of the awakening.
Like the reckoning. Okay, I'm here to heal.
Yeah, that bad.
The only way out of here.
Has it ever been said to you since?
No. But, I never forget, I was sharing a room with this guy and I was giving him my long sob story about my life and everything. And he said, Tim, will you shut up? I said, why? He said, you think you've got problems. I'm the heir to Jim Beam.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
Is that true?
That's
true story.
That's sort of put to his own views.
That
To
is
rest.
incredible.
Everyone's got issues around here.
Yeah,
and similar.
He had
That's
that on
amazing.
tap too.
Yeah,
It probably
yeah.
came out
That's
as breast milk.
incredible. But of all things, the alcohol.
That is
wow.
unbelievable.
Roll out the barrel.
Hey, can I
That's
ask you,
remarkable.
have you ever stayed in touch with anyone from Betty Fox? You must
Yeah,
have met some
no, they've asked
wild
me to
and
come
crazy
back and,
people.
They've asked me to come back and speak.
How wonderful.
To go there.
Because I'm sure
If I-
some don't come out the other
No.
side.
I said to the counsellor, I'm really chuffed that you should reach out to me, And they said, well, your book somehow made it into the campus here.
How wonderful.
Isn't
we're
it?
just amazed of
Well,
who you've become and from where you were.
Tim,
And-
well done.
And I said, but
That's
there must
great.
be a lot of people who, whilst I was there, who have got through it. And he said, well, unfortunately, about 12 of them are dead.
Of the people that you were at Betty Ford with. You know the most amazing thing about you, Tim,
What?
that's hit me like a ton of bricks, is how refreshing you are because you're so honest. So many people in this world wear masks, as we talk about a bit. I'm fine. I'm okay. No, they're not.
No.
But you put your life into a book. And, ultimately, by doing that, speaking your truth, and I might add, you originally wrote the book, which was all full of anger and, there was a bit of gossip and whatever, and you turned it around and went, no, I'm going to be truthful. This is what it's all about. How many people you probably haven't even locked into that you have healed and helped just from writing that book with your truth?
Oh, I get so many people write to me, and I can't believe that it became a bestseller.
Oh, I can.
I can too.
I binged, listened to it.
Yeah.
Oh, you
I
listened to
wrote
it?
it.
Oh, you
I
wrote,
did
no.
both.
Oh, I listened
I'm
because this one
obsessed.
is the reader
Yeah,
and I'm the
yeah.
audio.
I went to the 50th birthday of the Opera House the other night.
Oh, yes.
And
yeah.
Jon Olsen, who's designed the
Yeah.
his daughter Lynn, who's an artist who lives in Mallorca, came up to me, and she had a tear in her eye. She said, "Tim, I've read your book twice."
Oh,
See?
see,
You know?
yeah. Well, there you go. Well, for
making
listeners,
me
we highly
emotional.
suggest it, and it can,
Like-
Yeah,
It's lovely and vulnerability
That's
too. It's wonderful when you open up. You don't realise
But it's
you're
not
helping yourself, but you're helping other people, and it mightn't be intentional, but you
Yeah.
just do. It's a ripple effect.
well, really, it's a collection of stories.
Yep.
You know how I wrote
Best
the book.
storyteller.
I had a gallery in New York, which was so successful, was making so much money, was doing so well, and then COVID hit, and I had to close it down. But in all the downtime I had, whether being in an Ubers or flying, I'd take off from Sydney, and by the time I landed at Lax, I've written 3,000 words. And really, the inspiration was not just about trying to tell my story, to think how amazing I am that I got sober, but I wanted a story for my son to read, should he ever find himself in trouble.
Oh,
You know?
that's beautiful.
Great intention.
Yeah.
That's
Great
beautiful.
intention.
And that he knew what his father, something happened to me, he knew what his father's life was like. And the worst message, that people say, oh, look, Tim, you're such a kind of seemingly normal sort of guy in a way, despite the fact that you had an unusual upbringing, that if you could do it, anyone could do it. And I said, no, that's not true. I'm just one of the ones that did do it. And it's...
Yeah, so you simplified that. No. I just one of the ones that did it.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Almost sounds a bit like your mum then. She was the depth. Your father was the colour.
Yes,
And
yeah.
you sound a bit, because she was very simple with her words, but my God, straight to the point.
Yeah,
it was-
extremely.
You had a good balance,
Like-
didn't you, with your mum?
Yeah,
being
I
that
think
way
so.
and
Like, even
insightful
though
and-
under the shadow of Dad, Mum was always that lovely mainstay, that foundation stone for you.
Mum is the one that told me to believe in myself and to understand the importance of having dignity. Whereas Dad was all over the shop.
Yeah.
Because he was, Dad just loved the attention. You know, he loved being, as I said before, the darling of Sydney. He loved all the flattery. He loved. Dad essentially had an alcoholic father, and it affected him enormously.
Right, here we go.
So despite Dad's success, incredible success, he was still a man with very low self-esteem right until the end.
Right, yes.
And how's your relationship with your son James? Is what you were saying,
Amazing.
19.
How
he's
beautiful.
19.
Here
Oh,
we go, the full circle.
Is he an artist
we've just
too?
been in Europe together for a few months.
Wow.
Is he an art? Is he into art?
So he's a
or-
great musician. He loves
Great.
music.
It's his creativity.
But he's brilliant at writing.
See, that is
Yeah.
good. For everyone listening, remember when we talk about art or creativity, we're not talking about necessarily a painting because people go, oh, I can't paint. I say about what do you do to be creative? They go, oh, I can't paint. And I go, no, creative, what do you do?
Could be anything.
And they look at me as if I've got three heads. I go, do you bake? Do you write?
Yeah,
Do you put flowers in a vase? And they look at me glazed over.
Yeah.
Like creativity is so imperative in our world today.
Well, it is, and you know, there's a government closing down all these art schools at TAFE, but really, art schools are colleges of life because what they're not
Colleges of life.
Yep.
That's a
Yeah.
beautiful way of
That's a
saying
keeper.
it. We always say we're
That's a
students
keeper.
of life, colleges
I mean,
of life.
it's
art
barbaric
schools.
that because you're not teaching someone how to be a mechanic, your job, what you're doing there is a waste of money. So many people I went to art school with ended up in film, advertising, graphic design, theatre, you name it. Art schools are places of self-discovery where learning how to make a painting or a print or a draw, you learn about what is it about you that's different to somebody else. And that's the great accessory to creativity is you learn your idiosyncrasies.
Yep.
And it's amazing because art school's not about creating the next Brett Whiteley. It really is about learning who you are. And in most cases, you weren't particularly good at school, but art school was your vehicle by which you really learnt about how to express yourself.
I love
And
hearing
And
that.
these
That is
bloody
so good,
these
isn't it?
bloody governments, these bird-brained black and white morons are closing down art schools thinking they're a waste of money.
That's what the world's needing more
Yeah,
of.
we're
Yes,
needing,
and that's-
we are needing
yeah.
more of
As you were
that.
saying
So-
before, it's like so black and white.
Yeah.
Well, the world, we're human, we're organic matter.
Yeah.
We need
Well,
more
it's
than
good
black
to
and
have
white.
these open discussions that way,
Yeah.
and that's funny.
Yeah.
Tim, my son is quite artistic, and he went to COFA, and he also he went to New South Wales, and so he did the business, so he's got like the right and left brain going.
Yes.
And so, currently, he's doing some marketings, but he uses, because he's got that creative brain in the business world, it's awesome. He's
yeah.
27
It's
and loving it.
imperative.
Well, that's what I use in
Yeah.
running the
And-
gallery.
yes,
I've got the blend. But with my son, he's a brilliant writer, and
How wonderful.
I never knew I was a writer. It just happened. I love to get up and write. My father every day woke up and just wanted to.
When you say
to
write,
paint.
is that like journaling or is it like a diary? Like when you say write,
I just keep writing stories.
Oh, I
in
love
just
it.
a
It's
notebook.
great.
Just
And just a
stories.
notebook.
Yeah, or on your
So
Relative
mu-
to
some-
your day or your world, like being present or
It's like Colette, the famous French writer. She was amazing, and being a female, she struggled to be a successful writer in Europe or in France those days because women were not capable, like as painters either, weren't capable to be taken seriously as artists. So her husband became her pseudonym, but ultimately, he was such a terrible philanderer and basically spent all her money. That she, in the end, came out as Colette, as the one who wrote all these books. And I saw a film about her, and at the end of the film, there's a wonderful quote by her, which it says, "I've had the most amazing life.
oh,
If only I knew it sooner."
only if I knew it
Sorry?
sooner. If only if I knew it sooner.
Sooner.
It's beautiful.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's sort of a
Yes.
thing on life, isn't
That's
it?
actually,
Sort of
I've
a-
written that in my bedroom. It's on the wall.
Yeah.
I just love it.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
It's really
Gorgeous, isn't
special
it?
in my
Yeah.
heart, that.
And it gets back to attitude because, you can, certainly times when I've felt depressed and everything and thinking that, it's not fair that I have to be treated like this and, I can't help it because, the tall poppy thing, everyone wants to drag you down. And as they say, suffering is optional. And once you turn that around, suddenly everything changes.
Mindset's a huge thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes if you need the tools or somebody to help you, whether it's a girlfriend,
Yeah.
whether it's sort of someone professional, but sometimes just to put that shift in your head and all of a sudden it can be a great new day from sort of like going down that rabbit hole.
That's right.
Hey, Tim, I'm dying to know, what art do you have at home in your walls?
Yeah. What have you got?
It's a mess.
I love this.
I reckon it's a fabulous mess.
A plumber's taps drip.
Honestly,
This is great. Give me an idea.
Yeah.
I love a mess.
I know.
I dated a girl once, and she said that I lived in artistic squalor.
Oh,
That was the last time I took her out.
See ya.
See ya. But my father used to say, if you go into a house and you see a girl who has a shelf full of self-help books, no art, and no books other than those, run.
Run for the hills.
And if she doesn't like garlic,
amazing.
run even harder.
That is so good. Oh, well.
It's a great line, but give me an example. Come on, you've got to throw one at me that you have hanging on your walls. You've seen some of the greatest and sold some of the greatest artists.
Have you got your
in
dad's
Australia
lines
and the
up?
world?
I
Is
think
there
one
a
of the-
theme?
I think one of the last great things he said was, that, with everything going on in the world, he said, there's never been a more important time that we need to seek refuge in beauty.
Oh, well, refuge and beauty.
Or maybe there's
Wow.
beauty on your walls at home.
Yeah.
There's a
I
few
don't think
nudes.
so. Well,
We like some
nudes. So,
yeah.
can I be a bit cheeky and say, in your 60s, how's the love life? Where are we at now, Tim?
I basically was single for a couple of years, and at this stage, I've met someone who's very interesting,
Lovely.
and it's still early days, but I don't want to curse it.
No.
Yeah.
But that's great. We love to hear that, though.
It's nice when
That's
you can
good
find
news.
love at any age too, isn't it? Because we sometimes get with our listeners too, going,
Seriously.
"Oh, look, I'm in my 60s. I can't
Yeah.
even,
Yeah.
past it
Mindset,
now." Like that.
mindset,
Whereas
yeah.
others, it's just like, "Hey, we're just starting out."
Yeah, it's a new
Yeah.
beginning,
So,
know.
I think
Yeah.
I think
I
it-
think
I
Dad's
think-
a good example of love at any
Oh,
age.
Well-
actually, with the colour, baby.
Well, it's
He was colourful.
I think at a certain age you get to a stage where you go, anyone will love me will do, and I'm not going to do that.
No, beautiful.
You know? And I've got so many more big boxes to tick than ever, but you can't think that you'll ever tick every box.
No.
But it's really about connection.
It
You know?
is.
Sex to me is something where without connection, it's just not possible.
And that's beautiful. I tell you what,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's music
That's
for
what I
most
wanna
women's
hear.
ears, I
Yeah.
think, too.
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
isn't it?
well,
because
you
it's a
know-
personal connection, and that's
Because it's his
beautiful.
truth again. He's honest. You're in such a beautiful place, Tim.
Yeah,
Truly
well-
you are.
And you're opening up your soul, and a lot of people won't share that vulnerability, which to be in a relationship and to get the depth there is you need to be open.
And that's why this
and
book
to
is
see
great.
each other's, which can be scary for a lot
Very
of
much
people
so.
because
Yeah.
they sort of see your weaknesses.
Yes,
and
because
see
you're more
that, and a lot of
vulnerable.
people-
Well, people assume
so
that.
they won't. They'll put that guard up, so you're not that
Yes.
close. So I won't be that.
Yep.
So that can be a thing. But that's
Yeah.
beautiful. And I think
Sometimes that's a
Yeah.
protection because they've been hurt before. They put up the mask.
Yeah.
But really, when you strip that down and you just roar, this is me.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
simple
And
is
to
that?
get-
We
and
make
you-
it so complicated.
it's a fear, I guess. too,
Absolutely.
isn't it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it takes courage. A lot of times, sometimes courage to step into a new relationship because there's
love
always
is,
the
love,
thing.
love is scary.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
you have to.
I
You
think
know,
so,
if you're going to
yeah.
step in, you can have to.
Yeah.
You might get pushed out.
You could.
And so it's a risk with
So
anything.
go in and
Well, I've always
fly.
loved that quote by George Bernard Shaw,
Love George.
who said there are two kinds of tragedies in life. One is when you can't find your heart's desire, and the other is when you do.
Oh, that's great. Love that.
Tim, I love
That's such
your
a great
quote.
quote. I love that. I just wanted to
Yeah.
quickly say I love the Stephen Ormandy paintings in your gallery at the moment. We're going to put a whole lot of things up on our
Oh, great.
On the show
podcast
notes,
notes.
yes.
Thanks,
But
Doug.
that particular one came through, I think it was last night. I looked at it and I thought, made me so happy
Is there a
and
new
excited.
exhibition
It's
happening?
colourful.
Are you doing a,
Yeah, so my sister and Steve met at art school together, and
wow.
they've been
The whole
together.
family's been to art
Yes,
school.
yeah.
They've been
Mum and
together-
Dad met at art
Yeah.
school.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And they didn't want to work in coffee shops, so they set up a little stall at Paddington Markets making jewellery. Now it's turned into a huge international business. They employ over 200 people. But the thing is,
Dinosaur designs
the
for
thing
those
is, they
listening.
still essentially were painters, and they kept painting. And I think
Called
that's why they're so
passion.
successful, is because they're true artists. They're pure artists on the side of being designers, and they've been able to cross that barrier of snobbery where you can't be a pure artist and a designer. You know,
Yes.
one's really a kind of commercial offshoot. You've sold your soul if you become a designer, but they've been able to do it. Louise just had a sellout show with me last month. Now Steve's show's come up, opening this
It's
week.
just beautiful.
Yes.
And
For
it's-
anyone that just click on to Olsen Galleries, they're in Paddo. if you want to be up something in your house to uplift you and feel good,
Well,
that's how I
isn't it?
felt.
Well,
Yeah,
if you
They're
love if
amazing.
you love Matisse and all that lovely
Yes.
sense of colour, that
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
It is.
that the
Yeah. It's
a feel-good,
post-impressionists
isn't it?
had, you
Yeah.
know, Steve's got it. you
What
know.
a beautiful industry you're in, and you're
Yeah.
a beautiful song. We're so proud of where you've come. For those that
I can't believe it's a job.
I
see.
see.
That's what
What
they-
is it that my father used to say? Try and find a job where you don't feel like you're ever going to work.
Do what you love
That's
what you do.
beautiful.
And that's
Well, if you
a
find
wonderful
if you
thing.
find what you love to do, you never have to work another day of your
Except
life.
that's
That's
but it's
exactly
just
right.
like. But honestly, the book, if you get a chance, just takes you on this remarkable journey. And you know, he came out the other side. He's just blossomed.
Now, before
Now,
we leave,
yes,
we've got a
we've got
couple of our
questions.
signature questions.
You go first, Nicholas.
Okay, so Tim, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Oh,
I know. I did the deep breath with this one.
yeah, don't pick up the first drink. No, no. I think essentially, I would have said to myself, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Just yeah. I think the amount of times I worried about
Right.
being as famous or thinking that my life wouldn't be as important as my father's, and that success is based on what other people think. Success is how you feel about yourself.
Oh, bravo, isn't it? Bravo.
That's just music to my ears.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It
Okay,
is.
last
Yeah.
question.
Yeah,
because
that's
we're running out of
beautiful.
time.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
We could
That's
do
the
a
secret,
podcast
isn't
on
it?
that.
Yeah.
Last question
That's
is:
the
if you
secret.
had the opportunity of meeting anybody in the world over the back fence,
Mm-hmm.
who would that be and why?
Oh,
Living, passed away, they live over the other
Be
side of the
Nicola,
earth.
couldn't it? You know?
Absolutely.
We like the
I don't think
back
you've ever
fence,
said that. I
don't
love
we?
that one.
I'd love to meet Anthony Hopkins.
Oh,
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's also, and he's quite open about it. He's one of me too. He hasn't drunk for God knows how many years.
what a me too.
For
Me
yeah,
too, yes.
I love that.
over 40 years sober, and he's got lineage. That, I mean, I'm a half Danish, but my other side of my family is Welsh, and he's Welsh. I've always just loved his humility, and he's just someone that I think I could spend a few hours in a restaurant with, and just love to listen to, and he would be able to talk about so many things that would hit me, you know, to my very core,
Could resonate.
because he's experienced it. It's not just about our similarities; it's about what more can I learn about this journey. And in fact, someone said to me, you know, your book's so good, you should turn it into a movie, you know. And they said, who would you want to play you? And I said, anyone but Russell Crowe.
You went to school with him, didn't you?
Oh, in
One stage?
prep school, but
Yeah, prep
he
school.
doesn't remember. But the fact of the matter is, I think Anthony Hopkins would play a great John Olsen.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Now I
there
can
you
see the
go. I
beret
reckon
on
he'd
his
say
head.
yes to that as well.
Holding that
Wow.
brush.
Yes.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Love
Oh,
that.
wow.
That's a
That,
beautiful
Tim,
one.
that is so
Yeah.
beautiful. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's just been an honour having you here
Truly.
at the back fence.
Yep.
And we just love
Refreshing.
your big, open, big, vulnerable heart. You're like a big, gorgeous teddy
Yeah.
bear. Isn't
It's
it?
Oh,
so
thank
true.
you.
So beautiful.
We both got the most gorgeous hug when he walked. That's
Yes.
another thing that's lacking. More hugs,
Hugs,
everyone.
exactly, yeah.
They say it's
Yeah,
so
well-
good for your health.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, getting your energy right, because that's, you know, your vibe attracts your tribe.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
true.
so true.
Well,
I
we
agree
love
with
you
you.
being
Yeah.
part of our tribe
Thank you
here.
for
So
coming.
thank you. And
Really appreciate
and
you coming
everybody-
in today
yeah.
in so many ways.
Thank you for listening,
Yeah.
guys. We'll be back
Yes.
in your ear next Monday.
We sure will be.
So
Back again.
don't forget to rate and review.
That's
And
the one.
how many stars, Diney?
Out of 5?
Out of 5.
55.
55 stars. I love that.
Aim
Times-
high, aim
yeah.
for the stars.
Woo, times
Shoot for the
11.
stars. See you on Monday, guys.
Thanks for listening. Ciao, ciao.